I've been wanting to do something with this wizard for a while, and I think I figured out what I want to do.
Let's paint.
As I look at this wizard, I noticed he carries a gnarled staff. His hair is weathered and gray. Scrolls are at his hip and a bedroll upon his back. This is a wizard that spends his days alone in the mountains. But why? I think he's searching for something. I think he's searching for the portal. Okay, it's time to get to work. My first step is roughing everything in. I'm using this old paint can as a pattern. It looks to be the perfect size for my portal. My intention is that this portal is going to be in some ruins in the mountains, and our wizard doesn't know if it's going to actually work or not, as it's been eroded over time. I'm going to be making the portal look the same as the surrounding mountainside. Hopefully, our wizard can recognize it. On all the foam pieces, I'm going to be using some rolled up tinfoil to give some natural stone effects. I'm also going to be cutting random grooves in rocks and making sure there is no hard, sharp edges still visible from that cut foam. I'm really just going with the flow here, cutting out and gluing random sizes together to give me cliffs or mountains on the left side of my board and some remnants of that portal on the right. I'm going to try and save the pieces from that original circle cutout because I want the broken bits to be laying on the ground behind the portal. Once I have everything roughly where I want it and how I like it, I'm going to make some marks on the board. I think these tall stones are going to need some support, so I plan on putting in some screws or nails later on. I'm going to mark exactly where I want these rocks to be and how tall the screws need to be. All of my miniatures have magnets in the bases, so I thought the coolest way to make the portal light up would not be from a physical switch, but a magnetic one. I'm going to mark right where I want the model to sit to activate the portal. I'm also going to mark where the LED lights come up through the base. After that, I'm going to clean up all this mess and get ready for some electrical work. Before I began construction on this project, I had no intention of adding any lighting, but the more I thought about a wizard discovering a portal, the more I pretty much thought it'd be required that this portal lights up. I want to keep this simple because I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm just going to use a simple battery pack, a LED light strip, and a switch. This is called a reed switch. It's activated by just any small magnet. I'm marking out where I think the wires will go, and I am getting the correct lengths of wires soldered on. I think it's going to save me some headache down the road if everything is ready to go after I drill these holes. I drew up a simple schematic here that I will share with you. I know I had to reference it several times as I worked through this project. Next, I'm going to drill all the holes for the wiring, as well as the holes for the support screws and nails while I'm at it. Now that these holes are drilled, I'm going to use my router to connect the dots. Any screw holes that have wires passing through, I'm going to create a space, and also I'm going to create a space for that battery pack. This will be the last time I get to clean up the battery compartment, so I may as well file and prime it. While the paint is drying, I'm going to go ahead and run the screws and nails through the board. I prefer screws, but I didn't have any long enough, so I'm going to throw a little Gorilla Glue in to hold these nails into place. Next, I'm going to super glue in the battery pack, as well as throw a couple screws in it. But before I do that, I will thread the wires through the board. With the battery pack in, I'm going to route all of the wires into their correct places. Superglue works great to hold them into place as I'm working. Any exposed connections I'm going to cover with some shrink tape, and then I'll cut the wires to length. Now I need to get the LED strip light ready. I'm going to tin the end of it just like I tin all the wires. Tinning means to heat it and apply a little solder so that it's easy to just touch two connections together with the iron for a fast, bomb-proof joint. I do a quick test, make sure that the light works, and make sure it's the correct length before I solder the wires onto the strip. With the electrical work done, it's time to carve out a channel into the foam to run my LED strips. With the fit looking good, I'm going to super glue the foam to the board and super glue the strips into the foam. I thought the best way to protect and diffuse the lights would be to use some wax paper. So I cut some strips out and I super glue those into place as well. I'm feeling really good about the lighting situation, so I take this moment to transition back over to some terrain. I glue the rest of the little foam bits I have lying around into position, as well as the larger blocks that make up the mountain. It is starting to look like ruins. As for the bottom of the base, I've got some holes to fill. I have a quick 3-step process that I use to fill the holes. Step 1 is Bondo. I like using it because it dries so fast. I am filling in the majority of the gaps with the Bondo. With the Bondo dried and cured, step 2 is coating the entire surface with some spackle or sheetrock mud. I love this stuff because it dries fast too, but mostly I love it because it is easy to sand. Just a couple minutes and I have a nice, smooth surface to work with. Finally, I'll hit it with a quick coat of filler primer, followed by a final coat of some flat black primer, and our underside is complete. I'm thinking I want 3 layers of rocks here, each descending in size. So at this stage, I'm going to add some more shale rocks that I've got lying around that match the size of the foam rocks. And then I've got some smaller pebbles to throw in. And I'm going to be randomly placing those around the base of the larger stones. Natural mountains seem to be eroding, so I'm kind of thinking bigger rocks on top, smaller below. And then I'm going to add some tiny bits at the end of that, just like they've been accumulating over the millennia. I decided to seal in everything before adding the tiny rocks and sand. In retrospect, I think I could have waited to seal everything at the same time, but oh well, it's my first diorama. I'll get it next time. I coat everything with a layer of this Mod Podge. Matte seems to be the best, but I ran out and I've only got this gloss at the moment. No biggie. I hope it doesn't break the project. I throw in a little black paint so I can see where I've painted. I thin it down quite a bit so that it easily coats and sinks into those nooks and crannies. Next, I've got these really cool mini shale bits of rock. They look like something that would accumulate at the base of a cliff, so I slather that PVA glue in the cracks and crevices and pile on the little bits of shale. Next, I'm going to slather some more PVA glue on the rest of the wood that's still bare. Then we're going to coat that glue with a generous layer of play sand. This sand has got just enough variation in texture that I think it looks perfect on miniature bases. Knock off the excess sand, and then I'm going to apply a super thin down layer of PVA and water to lock everything in place. I try not to brush because it moves the stones and sand bits around. Just dab it on. It's pretty simple. Here I've got some Astro Granite texture paint that I'm going to help bridge that gap between the foam and the wax paper. I got a little all over the wax paper and used a dry brush to wipe it clean and turn the lights on to make sure I could still see through the wax paper. I got the consistency I want and I'm ready to move on to the next step. Once that texture paint's dry, I'm going to cover up my wax paper and lights with some sticky tack. That'll help protect it from primer and airbrushing. One quick coat of Rust-Oleum 2X flat black, and we are ready to airbrush. I want to create a nice little base of some greens and browns, and I'm hoping this will save me some time later when it comes to the hand brushing. I'm starting with this moot green, and I really like how bright it is. It's a huge contrast, and I think it already looks great against these dark stone structures. I got a little carried away here with the airbrush, but cleans right up. Can't even tell. I'm going to follow up with some darker brown around dirt and crevices. After I get the bulk of this done, I'm going to transition into a little bit lighter of a brown. I really want to create a focal point where our wizard is going to be standing looking at the portal. With all the spraying done, I feel confident that we can take the sticky tack off. I'm going to hit it with a quick coat of primer. That way we have the same base coat when we start dry brushing. I really didn't like how light the dirt turned out after I was done airbrushing, so I pulled out a little bit darker of a brown to hit the edges, hit the cracks and crevices, and really just give it another layer of dimension. I also noticed that my paints were pretty watered down with the airbrush, and they dried with some crusty, weird layers, so I'm gonna have to come back and touch up those browns in a little bit. Onto the rocks, I'm starting with a dark gray to begin building up all of the rocks that I can see. I'm really not worrying too much about those random colors I put on underneath. That was kind of the point, is to have some real unique variations. So, one round of dark gray followed by a layer of this beige color. Now with the beige, I really tried to hit about half of the rocks. I thought it would give it a little bit more of some realistic hues in all these boulder formations. Before the final coat, I wanted to go back and hit those small shale piles to give a little bit more of a contrast. I thought everything rocky was looking pretty bland, and once I threw this dark layer on those shale bits, I was feeling pretty happy. This last layer was a super fast hit of a brighter gray, and I tried to stay mostly on the top sides of the stones, everywhere that would really see some sunshine. Moving on to some color, I once again was feeling that need for more contrast. That moot green was sticking with me from the airbrush, and I thought I was gonna just hit it again and hit those areas that I thought moss might be growing. I was still not happy with those browns and decided to pull out this Mournfang brown and just brush it on to cover up those areas where the airbrush left some crusty dried paint. I watered it down, it went fast, and it worked great. I let it dry, and then I used this Baneblade brown for those focal points. Hitting everything with a physical brush really got that look that I was going for. A quick touch up with some gray on the rocks that were covered up, as well as adding a little green contrast paint on the moot green, put the final touches on all the painted portions of the terrain. I threw some felt pads on the underside of this base, and I applied the last bit of paint that the base would see. I love hitting the edges of the base. It really feels like a major milestone in the project. Next up is applying some moss. I just randomly brushed some PVA glue into the cracks and crevices, and then sprinkled some of this Woodland Scenics coarse turf all over the diorama. I knocked off the excess, and we're done. Pretty big change for just a small bit of work. I pulled out a handful of various grasses and flowers so I could play around with where they may look good. Then just started gluing them into place. I ended up cutting up some of these flower bunches because they all looked so similar. And it's realistic, right? Flowers sometimes pop up in random places, not just in the same big bunches in the middle of dirt. I couldn't be more happy with the colors I ended up with. I like to abide by rules of 3, and these colors were no different. More than 3 and I think it looks too busy. Less than 3 it looks too simple and unrealistic. For this terrain, I went into it thinking browns, grays, and greens for my scheme. Things don't always end up how I envision them, but this time, I think things went my way. For our wizard, I started with a quick zenithal highlight on all of the accessories. It's just so fast and easy for small pieces to look good using contrast paints. For the colors of the cloak, I decided to go with a classic, Wizard Blue. I did a quick base coat of Thousand Suns Blue. 2 thin coats actually. I take great care to ensure that the robes look great because they're going to be the main focal point of this miniature. I actually spend most of my time on the robes. After the base coat, I hit with a quick round of Stormfiend contrast paint to give it some nice, rich depth. I love throwing in a little Lamian medium on contrast paints or washes to help coat everything more evenly and help keep the paint from drying out too quickly. Once that wash is dry, I top off these robes with a dry brush to really make it pop. I'm back to my original Thousand Suns blue for the first round, really taking my time. I'm feeling good about it, and at the very end, I'll throw in some white to those target areas for a nice finished effect. After the robes, it's time to paint the various components that this mage is lugging around. I think this is what I love most about this character. All of his stuff. I think the highlight is his bedroll under his cape. I mean, it kind of makes sense. You never see a wizard with a backpack. Unless he's got some magical bag of holding, he's got to carry all of this stuff. This is the most realistic wizard I think I've ever seen. Off camera, I decided to throw on some matching sand and paint it up with the same browns as the path so he matches the diorama. My intent with the diorama is that any miniature with a magnetic base can light up the portal, so I don't need this old guy to be glued down to the scene. I hit the leaves with the same moot green and dark angel contrast paint. It should pair up real well when we get him in front of the portal. To tie all the colors together, I give the wizard a generous coat of Nuln Oil. It really helps to darken those shadows and give us a finished feel. I have had an absolute blast with this project, and I hope that you've enjoyed the journey as much as I have. Come back for the next one, and if you have any good ideas, let me know. Without any further ado, the portal.